Now, clearly the door still exists. It didn't get deleted. We can still see it here in section just fine. But notice that in the floor plan, it has disappeared. Okay, so the door clearly does not meet the same criteria that the cabinets do. So you may be thinking, well, it's just because the door is above the top of the cut plane. The cabinets aren't doing that. Well, let's test that theory out. So I'm going to select one of these cabinets and I will increase the elevation here to, let's try adding about a foot or 300 millimeters. So I'm going to go to 6'6" in imperial, or you can just add 300 millimeters to whatever it is in metric. So now this piece of casework is doing the same thing as the door. The top of it is poking out of the top there, but notice that it is unaffected here in plan. So clearly that's not it, right? So what I'm going to do is use my undo drop down here and undo back a few steps to get the door to go back down to where it was previously. And now let's talk about what the rules actually are. In order to display in the zone between cut and top, the element must be of one of three categories. It must be generic model, or window, or casework. So the reason that these elements are displaying is because they're casework. And the reason that the door did not is because it is not one of those three categories. So in addition to being of one of those three categories, casework, generic models, windows, it also will display if any part of the element intersects this upper zone. That's why when the cabinet was poking through the top, it's still displayed. But if I were to select the cabinet and move it all the way out of that range, it will finally disappear. Okay, so in order to display, it's got to be those three categories and it needs to fall within that zone. So that's the behavior of the above cut plane view range. Now I'm going to click to the floor plan here. And looking at my floor plans, I don't have a foundation plan. So what I want to talk about next is a similar concept related to view range, but in order to do it, I want to create a new floor plan. So let's go to the View tab here, Floor Plans drop down, and we'll choose Floor Plan. And then we're going to make an architectural plan. And the only view it's offering us is the one that I want to use, which is top of footing. So let's just simply click OK there. All right. Now, when this floor plan gets created, you're going to see an element right here, which is an elliptical arched opening, and a couple countertops appearing in the foundation plan. Now, what's a little bit strange about that is that those elements are not down at the level of the foundation. Now, to make this a little bit clearer, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select one of these, and then I'm going to click back to the floor plan, and notice what is highlighted right here. And then if I click this one and go back to the foundation plan, notice what's selected. And if I click this, so this is geometry that occurs in the floor plan. We've got this opening and these two countertops. Why are they displaying here in our foundation plan? Well, it's exactly the same issue. This is a generic model, and these two are casework. Now, to really understand this, let's take our section. Up here, you've got a split segment tool. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to click right about here with this little knife and then move down to move the bottom portion. You could move it forward or backward. I'm going to pull it backward to in front of that casework there. I'll click the modify tool to cancel. And now I'm going to take the section and pan it over. And I've got some additional illustration over here, which will start to explain what's happening. The top of footing level is here. That means that when you measure 4 feet or 1,200 millimeters above that, your cut plane ends up right about there, just below the slab. If you measure 7'6" or 2,300 above that, the top of your view range ends up going right through the middle of these countertops and, of course, through the middle of that generic model opening. And that is why these three elements are displaying. So the solution in our foundation plan is to adjust the top of view range and just lower it down so that that is no longer an issue. So I'm going to click in the top of footing. You can locate and click the view range button or just type VR. And then what I want to do here is lower the top of the view range down. Now remember, these numbers can't get out of order, but they can be equal. So I'm just going to make the top equal the cut plane, and then I will click OK, and those elements will disappear. So the last thing I want to talk about is the view depth. Now you can see here I have created it at 2 feet or 600 millimeters lower than the bottom of this view. And that is so that the structural foundations underneath those walls can display. Notice here in the floor plan, they are not currently displaying, right? So if we go back to view range in this view, you're going to see that currently we don't have a view depth at all. The bottom and the view depth are both set to 0. So the view depth is a special zone that will display any of the geometry that falls within it using a special override. So the first thing you need to do is enable it. Okay, so I'm going to do that with that setting that I've got illustrated there in the section. So -2 feet in imperial or -600 millimeters in metric, and I'll click OK. Now, the trouble is, it looks as though nothing happened. So the extra little wrinkle that we have here in this particular file is that if you zoom out a little bit, we've got this site plan model right here. And it turns out that that site plan model is just simply covering up the foundation and making it impossible to see it. Okay, I'm going to take that site plan model and go to my sunglasses, and let's just hide that temporarily. Okay, we can deal with it more permanently in a future video, but for now, I just wanted you to understand the concept of view depth. So now let's go back to view range, VR. I'll set this back to 0 and click apply. The foundations disappear. I go to -2 and I click apply, and the foundations reappear. So now you can see the way that the view depth operates. Now notice that they're coming in not full intensity. They're kind of like light gray there. The reason for that is anything in the view depth zone will appear using a special override line style. So this illustrates perfectly the point I'm trying to make in all the videos in this chapter. The very first thing you always want to do when you're trying to change the way something appears in a view is to start with the view's extents and then move on to other settings. So start with the what before you move on to the how. What do you want to display? I want to see the footings, right? So the footings aren't displaying. How do you make those display? That's the first thing you solve. Then you can move on to how they're displaying. I'm not satisfied with the way these footings display. I want them to have a dashed edge. That comes next. It doesn't matter if you make the edge dashed and you can't see them. Okay, so always start with the what before you move on to the how. All right, so how do we make this a dashed edge? Well, that's on Manage. We're going to go to Additional Settings and Line Styles. And the reason for that is if you expand this, and let's just widen this column, it's a little narrow for me. Okay, there is a line style here called Beyond. That is what we're seeing there for those footings. And you can see now why it's gray, right? Because the color is assigned gray. Well, it's got a solid line pattern, and I can just choose a dash pattern and click OK. And now all those edges will display in dashed. This video is going to be the first look at that, and we're going to focus on the most global way to modify how elements display, and that is object styles. So I've got a section open here, and I'm just going to zoom in and point out a few problems that I see. There are some wall elements, and I've got one here and here and here that are all being sliced through in this section. There's a roof element that's being sliced through, and those are nice and bold on the edges to indicate that they're being sliced through. Ceilings, on the other hand, here, and this floor element, they are not showing that bold rendition, and I'm not satisfied with that. It's difficult to tell that those items are actually being sectioned through, and I want to address that. So that's going to be a job for object styles. And the reason we want to use object styles for that is this problem is not limited to just this view. If I open up another section view like this transverse section, notice that I have the same problem here. So I've got a roof that's bold, walls that are bold, but floors and ceilings that are not. So what I want to do is find a way to modify this behavior, but not have to do it in every single view independently. And that's exactly what Object Styles is for. So I'm going to go to Manage, click the Object Styles button here, and it's possible you might need to expand some of these columns here to be able to read everything. So I'm just going to expand the first couple like so. And then notice that here on the Model Objects tab, we see a list of all the model element categories. Now I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and locate the Walls category. And then let's focus on the line weight column. So notice there are two line weights, projection and cut. So for walls in projection will use a pen weight 2. Walls in cut will use a pen weight 5. So Revit line weights start at 1, which is the thinnest, and go on up from there. And so a pen weight 2 is much thinner than a pen weight 5. Now you can see examples of that if I move the object styles out of the way and we look off here in the distance. Here and here we have two examples of walls in cut. They're nice and bold with the pen weight 5. And then off in the distance on the soffit condition here, we have some additional walls here, but we're seeing them uncut off in the distance, so they're using only pen weight 2. So I would like the floors and the ceilings to behave the same way. So it's as simple as scrolling back up to the top of the list. Let's locate the ceilings category. And I'm going to change the cut line weight for ceilings to pen weight 5. Press enter, scroll down, locate the floors category next, and repeat the same thing. 5 and enter. Let's click OK. And now you're going to see all the floors and ceilings in this model are now displaying in the same bold pen weight here in section. But more importantly, that change applies everywhere. So you don't need to do the change again in the transverse section or any other view. It's already done in every view when you do the object styles. That's the advantage of object styles. So if you discover a deficiency in a particular object that really should be handled globally, then the right place to edit it is object styles. So in this video, we're going to be talking about visibility graphics, and I'm going to show you several examples of using this tool. So I'm going to start right here in the first floor plan. And the first thing I notice is that it's an architectural floor plan, but it's showing a lot of site information. So I don't think I want to see all of that site information here. So the way that we can control that is using visibility graphic overrides, and we can hide the categories that we're not interested in. So let's look at that as our first example. So I'm going to go to the View tab, and the Visibility Graphics button is right here, or you can type the keyboard shortcut VG. When this dialog displays, I want you to take note of the message at the top. It says Visibility Graphic Overrides for Floor Plan L1 Architectural. So even though this dialog looks a lot like the Object Styles dialog, it's actually very different. And anything that we change here only affects the current view. Now notice that the first column here is the visibility column this time. So that's also unlike object styles. And so that means if you want to hide a category, you just simply uncheck the box. So the first category that I want to hide is the planting category. So I'm going to scroll down here and locate planting, and I will uncheck it, and let's click apply. And you're going to see some trees disappear there. And if I kind of move this out of the way, you can see the trees have disappeared throughout this view. Now, we've got some windmills over here. We've got a property line over here. I'd like to hide some of that information as well. If you scroll down and locate the site category, you will see that several categories also have subcategories. Property lines are a subcategory of site. Now, if you were only interested in hiding the property lines, you could uncheck and click apply, and it would just hide that, but the windmills would stay. If you would rather hide all of the site information, then instead you can uncheck the parent category, and that would apply to everything, including the subcategories. So the property line would also disappear in that case. Now, in addition to those categories, I'm also seeing the roads and the sidewalk and the parking lot. That's all controlled by the topography. So if I scroll down here and locate Topo Solid and uncheck that, and let's click OK now, you can see that I now have a much cleaner first floor plan. So that's our first example of modifying things with visibility graphics. So the next thing I want to do is show you or confirm for you that all of those changes only affected the first floor plan. So if you look here on the project browser, you've got a branch called Floor Plans Site Plan. I'm going to expand that. And then there's our site plan. I'm going to double click to open it up. And we've seen this view before in an earlier video, but let's zoom in here a little bit. Now notice that the trees, the property line, the windmills, the parking, it's all still displayed here. But if you zoom in a little closer, you'll notice that in addition to that, we're also seeing electrical outlets and light switches. So it doesn't seem like those categories ought to display on a site plan. So let's go right back to visibility graphics, or VG, and let's hide the categories we don't want to see here. So that's going to include things like data devices, electrical equipment and electrical fixtures, and lighting devices. And when I click OK, all of those elements will disappear. And now that looks a little bit more correct for a site plan. So I'm going to close the site plan view. And those are two really simple examples of just focusing on visibility that we can use visibility graphics for. But it's visibility and graphics. So it's not limited to just visibility. So what I want to do next is create an example where we're going to do both visibility and graphics. So to do that, though, I need to create another view. So I'm going to start with my level 1 architecture plan. I'm going to right click it, duplicate the view, and there's a couple ways we can duplicate, and I'm going to demonstrate the first two. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is just labeled duplicate. That's going to add the word copy 1 to the end of the name. I'm going to right click and choose rename, press the end key on my keyboard to jump to the end of the name, backspace out, copy 1, and then put in furniture at the end of the name. Here, this view now is going to be my furniture plan. And what you'll notice is that when we do duplicate, it creates another view of the model itself. So you see the model geometry, but when you compare that to the architectural plan, it contains none of the annotation, none of the tags, the dimensions, or the text. Now, if you want a copy of this view that contains a copy of the dimensions and text and annotation, then what you can do instead is right-click the view, duplicate, and choose Duplicate with Detailing. So that's the difference between those two commands. So I'm going to right-click that one and rename, and then remove copy 1, and instead write power as a suffix. So I now have 3 copies of my first floor plan, my default architectural, and then furniture and a power plan. So I'm going to go to the furniture plan and do some more work in visibility graphics. So let's go to VG, or visibility graphics button, and I want to hide the same categories we hid in the site plan. So I don't want to see any of the electrical information in this view. So I'm going to scroll down and hide data devices, hide electrical equipment and electrical fixtures, and hide the lighting devices. And I will click apply there. So you're going to see all of those elements disappear. So now let's move on to the graphics idea, right? So that's the visibility, but remember, this is visibility graphics. So what else can we do? I'm going to select the furniture category, and notice the presence of all these override buttons. So there's lots more that we can do here than just hiding things. So I'm going to click the override button for projection lines, and I'm going to boost the line weight up to a pen weight 4 and click OK. Then under patterns, I'm going to click the override button and change the pattern to this diagonal crosshatch small. And then I'll change its color to this medium gray and click OK. So let's click OK and then finally OK one more time. And now you should see that all of the furniture has taken on this crosshatch pattern, and its outline is now bolder than it was before. So this serves to emphasize the furniture here in the furniture plan view and make it a little bit more prominent. So now let's direct our attention to the power plan. Now here in the power plan, I obviously don't want to hide the electrical outlets and so on, because that's the purpose of a power plan. Now you could hide the furniture so that the electrical outlets stand out, but it might be nice to see the furniture here. So instead of hiding it, let's go to visibility graphics and look at one more example of changing the graphics. So as an alternative to scrolling through the list, you can type the letter F. That takes you down in the alphabet, and then you scroll a little further, and there's furniture. It's just another way to do it. And over here on the far right, there's a halftone checkbox. I'm going to click that and click OK. And now that effectively de-emphasizes the furniture without hiding it entirely. So those are just some examples of the kind of things you can start to consider doing in visibility graphics. Now, there are certainly plenty more that you can do. But what I want to leave you with is making sure that it is very clear that all we've done is customize the way things look in this video. We have not actually changed the model in any way. So when I created these three views, these are not copies of the model. This is still one unified model. If I grabbed hold of this reception desk here and moved it, notice that as I click through the other views, not only is it moved in each of those views, it's still selected. There's only one reception desk, and we're just simply seeing it in three different views and rendered in three different ways. So feel free to experiment further with visibility graphics here in this view. This is a very common and powerful command that once you start using Revit on a regular basis, you'll find you're using visibility graphics quite frequently as well. In this video, I want to consider the fundamental difference in behavior between model geometry, things like walls, doors, floors, roofs, and annotative or detailing geometry, things like detail lines, dimensions, tags, and text. These two classifications of elements behave fundamentally differently in Revit projects. And it's really important that you understand that, especially when you consider things like manipulating and controlling those elements' visibility. I've got a floor plan here that contains both types of elements. So there's naturally a bunch of model geometry, and if we kind of zoom in and look around, you can see I've got tags for the windows, tags for the doors, tags for the rooms, okay? And there's some dimensions out here. So I've got both kinds of elements. Now, this is the main architectural floor plan, but if you watched the previous video, you recall that we created two duplicates. So we had a furniture plan, and notice that this view does not contain any of that annotation, none of those tags or dimensions, and then this power plan does. It's an exact copy of the original architectural view. So when we first created this power plan, we duplicated it with the detailing from the architectural view. But let's say that now we are looking at this and deciding that maybe we don't really need to see the door tags or the window tags after all. Well, your first instinct is probably to say, oh, sure, I know what to do. Let's go to visibility graphics. And here you'll find there's an annotation categories tab. So far, so good. Let's expand this a little bit so we can read it better. And let's scroll down, and we've got categories like door tags, and scroll a little further down. We've got our window tags here, and I can just simply hide those two categories and click OK. Problem solved, right? Well, I'm going to recommend that you don't do it that way. Now, at first, it may seem surprising to hear me say that, but I've got a few different reasons why I don't like that approach. First of all, it's redundant. The idea behind tags is that tags, by definition, are already view specific. All annotation is. So we've already seen this, that annotation exists only in the view that it's created in. And that means that it will already only show in that view. If you hide it, you could send the wrong message, or it could be confusing to people. Like, let's say that at some point somebody kind of comes over here and says, oh, I think I want to add some window tags to this view. Now, maybe they weren't in the meeting where we decided we didn't want to see window tags in the power plan, or maybe we've changed our mind, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to go to the tag command here, and I'm going to touch this window. Now, it generates a warning, but maybe I missed that warning. Maybe I didn't notice. And I go on to this next window here, and I go, well, that's strange. Why isn't it displaying these tags? And so maybe I try again. And it may take me a while to notice that it's actually creating the tags, but simply hiding them because that category is hidden. So when I finally figure that out, perhaps I cancel out of the command. I go back to the View tab, go back to Visibility Graphics or type VG, and go back to Annotation, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to locate the door category and turn it back on, and the Windows tags and turn it back on, and I click OK. And now notice that I ended up with multiple tags in the same location. Now, at first, that may not be that big of a deal, but it certainly will be a little bit disruptive to realize that you have these double tags, but it also might be frustrating for the person who did the second set of tags to realize that they wasted all that effort creating that second set of tags when there was a perfectly good set of tags just hidden from the view. Now, I understand why folks' instinct is to hide the geometry. You know, they're worried, oh, just in case I'm going to hide it, we may want it again later. But that's not the way that annotation is designed to behave in Revit. In Revit, model geometry is visible in all views. So therefore, we want to hide or show when it comes to model geometry. Annotation, by definition, is view by view. Therefore, we want to either add the annotation or remove it. So what is my recommended solution to not wanting to see the window or door tags here in the power plan? I recommend that you select everything, go to Filter, check None, select Door Tags and Window Tags, click OK, and then press Delete. And I know at first that might feel uncomfortable, and you're not sure that that's correct, and you're wondering, well, why would we just hide it just in case? I'm going to ask you to trust me on this. This is the right way to do it. Now, there are so many easy ways to annotate views. We're going to talk about this in a future video, but let me just show you a quick example right now, okay? It's not going to be door and window tags, but I'm going to focus now on room tags, okay? I'm going to select everything once again, go back to Filter, check None, and I'm going to pick Room Tags, click OK. And this time I'm not going to delete them, but looking at my furniture plan does not contain any room tags, and it might be nice if it did. Well, rather than painstakingly create each and every room tag, perhaps I look at this other view and I say, hey, there's a perfectly good set of room tags right here. All I need to do is select them as we've done, copy that to the clipboard, click over here to the furniture plan, go to this drop-down menu right here, and choose Paste Aligned to the current view. And I'll get a new set of room tags in exactly the same locations as the parent view, and it's just that easy. So if for some reason you decided you wanted window tags here in the furniture plan, instead of having to painstakingly go place them one at a time, you would simply go back to a view like the architecture plan, select them all. And in fact, you can even do that by right-clicking and saying select all instances in the view, and that's even faster than using Filter. And then with those window tags selected, copy them to your clipboard and paste them to the other view. So that's the way that I recommend that you manage annotation. If you don't need the annotation in the view, don't have the annotation in the view. So don't hide it, simply remove it. And then if you don't want to see a model element in a view, then yes, by all means hide it. Because if you delete something in a model view, it is deleted everywhere. And by the way, if you delete something that has a tag on it, like say this window, not only is it deleting the window, but it will also delete any tags that rely on that window. So deleting model geometry is a much bigger deal. So I'm going to undo and undo to get the reception desk back. Okay, but deleting tags, it's a totally different proposition. Deleting dimensions, it's a totally different proposition. So those elements can safely be deleted and is actually preferable. I rarely, if ever, hide anything annotative, and I recommend that you don't as well.